September 9th, 1992. Nirvana steps onto MTV's stage with one simple goal: play their music their way. What followed was one of the most chaotic, controversial, and unforgettable nights in music television history. A live performance that turned into a declaration of war between Nirvana, MTV, and rock's old guard. This is the story of how a few chords, a flying bass guitar, and a single shouted name made the 1992 MTV Video Music Awards explode. By late 1991, Nirvana had gone from underground heroes to global superstars. Nevermind had dethroned Michael Jackson on the Billboard charts. MTV couldn't get enough of Smells Like Teen Spirit. Yet the band's relationship with the network was uneasy. MTV wanted Nirvana, but only the palatable version, the clean, accessible one. Nirvana, especially Kurt Cobain, hated being packaged. They'd spent their entire careers trying not to be what MTV wanted them to be: predictable, safe, and obedient. When the invitation came for the 1992 Video Music Awards, Nirvana agreed to play. But there was one catch. Kurt wanted to debut a new unreleased song, Rape Me. The title alone sent MTV executives into panic. They worried about sponsors, censors, and headlines. It wasn't that they misunderstood the song. Kurt had written it as a protest against exploitation, but they feared the optics. MTV told Nirvana flatly, "You can't play that." Kurt pushed back. The band argued. MTV threatened to pull their slot entirely. Finally, a compromise. They would perform Lithium. But Nirvana being Nirvana, that compromise came with a middle finger attached. They planned to open with just enough of Rape Me to scare the network, then switch to Lithium. Meanwhile, another storm brewed backstage. The tension between Nirvana and Guns N' Roses was at an all-time high. Kurt had mocked Axl Rose publicly, calling him a sexist and a homophobe. Axl fired back, calling Kurt a junkie with a loudmouth wife. MTV made the brilliant decision to put both bands in the same hallway backstage. It was a recipe for disaster. Before the show, Courtney Love saw Axl and shouted, "Axl! Axl! Do you want to be the godfather of our daughter, Frances Bean?" Axl glared. "You shut your bitch up," he said to Kurt, "or I'll take you down right here." Kurt just smirked. "Okay, honey," he said to Courtney. "You heard the man. Be quiet." That sarcastic exchange set the tone. Everyone could feel the tension crackling through the building. Nirvana versus Guns N' Roses. Grunge versus glam authenticity versus image. And right in the middle of it all, MTV, trying to hold it together. When the cameras rolled, Kurt Cobain strummed the opening chords. They weren't Lithium. They were Rape Me. For a few seconds, the entire production froze. You can almost imagine the MTV executives screaming into their headsets. But just as quickly, Nirvana swerved into Lithium, the song they had promised to play. It was a small act of rebellion, but a perfect one. They'd found a way to both follow the rules and break them at the same time. The performance itself was raw, unhinged, and slightly off-kilter. Kurt's guitar went slightly out of tune. He forgot to kick on his distortion pedal during the chorus. Dave Grohl pounded the drums like a man trying to break free from gravity. Then came Chris Novoselic's moment. Near the end of the song, he decided to make a statement, a rock star flourish. He tossed his bass high into the air, planning to catch it on the downbeat. He missed. The bass came crashing down onto his forehead with a thud that echoed through the arena. Chris staggered backward, dazed, before stumbling off stage to vomit. Meanwhile, Kurt smashed his guitar into the amp, climbed onto the stage monitors, and screamed into the feedback. And just when the chaos seemed to reach its peak, Dave Grohl leaned into the microphone and shouted, "Hi, Axl!" "Hi, Axl. Where's Axl?" It was pure provocation, a live taunt broadcast to millions of viewers. When the song finally ended, there wasn't applause. There was stunned silence. The cameras cut away awkwardly. It was messy, loud, and gloriously authentic. Exactly what Nirvana wanted. The minute Nirvana walked off stage, chaos followed. Security guards, producers, and musicians were yelling in every direction. Courtney Love was still fuming from her exchange with Axl. Axl's bandmates were ready to retaliate. Chris, still dizzy from the bass hit, had to be helped to the dressing room. He later said, "I thought it was going to look cool, until it didn't." Dave Grohl was laughing. "I couldn't believe it," he recalled later. "We go on TV, Kurt starts 'Rape Me,' Chris knocks himself out, and I'm yelling at Axl Rose. It was perfect." But MTV didn't think so. Executives were furious. One producer allegedly yelled, "They'll never play this network again." Adding to the absurdity, Cobain, still irritated, allegedly spit on a grand piano backstage, thinking it belonged to Axl Rose. It didn't. A few minutes later, Elton John sat down at that same piano to perform "November Rain" with Axl. So yes, Elton John unknowingly played on a piano covered in Kurt Cobain's spit. By this point, the 1992 VMAs had devolved into complete rock and roll anarchy. And yet, in the middle of it all, Nirvana still managed to win 2 awards that night: Best New Artist and Best Alternative Video for "Smells Like Teen Spirit." They didn't bother with acceptance speeches. They just laughed and took the trophies. In the days that followed, MTV tried to smooth things over. They couldn't deny that Nirvana had drawn the biggest buzz of the night. But behind the scenes, executives were livid. Kurt shrugged it off. "We just wanted to make a point," he told reporters. "We don't like being told what to play." The feud with Guns N' Roses, however, didn't cool down. Axl went to the press, calling Nirvana a joke and Cobain a loser. Cobain responded with his usual sarcasm. "Axl? He's such a sweetheart. We send each other flowers." Grohl later joked, "I think that night was the moment MTV realized what they had unleashed. You can't package rebellion. You can only film it." Looking back, the 1992 MTV Video Music Awards became more than just a performance. It was a generational shift, captured in real time. On one side stood the polished, arena-sized titans of the 1980s, Guns N' Roses, Van Halen, and the last remnants of hair metal. On the other stood Nirvana, scrappy, self-destructive, and real. Their unfiltered performance symbolized the death of glam and the rise of grunge. The moment Kurt strummed those first forbidden chords of "Rape Me," the balance of power shifted. It was as if Nirvana had ripped open the curtain and shouted, "This is who we are. Take it or leave it." And MTV, for all its control, couldn't stop it. The network that had made bands like Poison, Bon Jovi, and Motley Crue famous was now watching its new star bite the hand that fed it. Fans loved it. Critics called it unprofessional. But in hindsight, that night captured everything that made Nirvana special. Their refusal to play nice, their authenticity, and their quiet sense of humor in the face of chaos. In the years since, the 1992 VMAs have become part of Nirvana's legend. It's studied in documentaries, cited in interviews, and dissected by fans who still can't believe it actually aired live. For some, it's the moment that defined grunge. Imperfect, unfiltered, and completely human. For others, it's the moment Nirvana officially became bigger than MTV. Even now, decades later, that night stands as a symbol of rebellion. A reminder that authenticity can't be scripted. There's also an undeniable irony. Despite all the chaos, Nirvana would return to MTV less than 2 years later for MTV Unplugged in New York, the polar opposite of the VMA performance. Where the 1992 show was loud and reckless, Unplugged was intimate and haunting. It showed both sides of Nirvana, the fury and the fragility. The VMAs were the fire. Unplugged was the ashes that glowed afterward. Dave Grohl has since laughed about that night, calling it the most punk rock thing we ever did. Chris Novoselic admitted that his bass throw was a terrible idea but a great ending. Even MTV eventually softened its stance, embracing the chaos as part of its own mythology. As for Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain, they never reconciled. But years later, Nirvana's former manager said he believed that if Kurt had lived, they might have buried the hatchet. The feud wasn't really about two men. It was about two eras colliding. And if you watch that clip now, the opening chords, the bass flying through the air, Grohl shouted, "Hi, Axl. echoing into the crowd, it still feels dangerous. You can feel the tension, the rebellion, the authenticity. That's why it still matters. In that moment, Nirvana wasn't just performing a song. They were performing a revolution. The 1992 MTV VMAs weren't just another award show. They were the night rock music changed on live television. The night grunge declared victory over glam. And the night MTV realized it couldn't control the very chaos that made it famous.